Coming up on today's show, the Broncos made some roster moves, so we're going to break that down for you guys and get you caught up with the latest member of the Broncos roster. Plus, is Russell Wilson in trouble after that first preseason game? What's the overall takeaway from how Russ looked? And is he going to be running for his life once again? We're going to talk about the offensive line. And then I've got some roster sleepers after that first week of the preseason. Maybe some players that weren't quite even household names for the diehards out there that you should get to know after the first preseason game. But before we get into all of that, we are trying to reach our next subscriber goal, which is 14,600. We've got 52 subs to go. Let's get there today. Help us grow our channel and subscribe for free daily content. Now, the roster moves that Denver made today, they signed wide receiver J.J. Koski. So, former Rams wide receiver, and the corresponding move was the waiving of linebacker Ray Wilborn. Now, J.J. Koski has played in 5 games back in 2021 for the Rams after being a 2020 UDFA out of Cal Poly. He's got some special teams experience, 5 kick returns, 2 punt returns. Special teams was bad. And that's kind of putting it lightly, let's be honest, after the first preseason game. So this could be a move to try and bring some more competition into the special teams unit. Marvin Mims was listed as the starting punt and kick returner for this team. He did not play in that first preseason game, so I'm not going to be too concerned or too, panicky after one preseason game where your starting return man wasn't even out there. But I could see Denver just trying to add some speed, especially after some injuries at the wide receiver position, and want to make sure they have some good depth. And honestly, this could be a practice squad upside. Now, the corresponding move was Ray Wilborn, a linebacker, was waived as a result. He has very little NFL experience. He was elevated to Denver's active roster for the last 2 weeks of the 2022 season. He did not play a single snap on defense, just 31 snaps on special teams throughout his NFL career, a 2020 UDFA out of Ball State. So I don't think either player was contending or is contending for a spot on the 53-man roster, but those are the latest moves, and here are the updated depth charts after those moves were made. The wide receiver room, I still think, is not going to be changed by Koski signing. No offense, JJ, but Judy, Sutton, Mims, I think Brandon Johnson is getting close to being a roster lock. Marquez Callaway, those 5 guys seem to be emerging as the top 5 receivers. And then you have Kendall Hinton, Jalen Virgil. How about Taylor Grimes? Someone who put together a good first preseason game. Little Jordan Humphrey and Montreal Washington, all and along with Michael Bandy, who had like 3 or 4 grabs against the Cardinals, all battling for that last wide receiver spot. The linebacker room is pretty set in my eyes, and no offense to Wilborn, I did not have him making the 53-man roster anyway. Gregory, Singleton, Jewell, Clark, plus Baron Browning once he comes back. He might start the year on IR to open up an extra roster spot, but you've got Benito, who looked great in that first preseason game, Sanders, Jonathan Cooper, Seth Benson could even make a run at inside linebacker. At the end of the day, I just did not have Wilborn making the roster. And no offense to the new wide receiver, Koski, I also don't have him making this roster. I think this is just another camp body. Maybe they like him enough to put him on the practice squad, and if they start getting, banged up at receiver, or they want to bring some speed for special teams, he could get elevated. But for now, I don't think you should look at these moves and think they are big, earth-shattering moves by any means. But let's talk about Russell Wilson in preseason week 1. Because, of course, all eyes are on Russell Wilson, right? And everything he does is put under a microscope and stretched out and broken down into every single second he is on the field. And that's sort of the price you pay when you get a huge contract extension and you are on the other end of a multi-first-round pick draft trade going the other direction. Of course, everything you do is going to be scrutinized and whatnot, especially after a down 2022 season. But here are my overall takeaways after Russ's preseason debut, if you will, for 2023. It was a slowish start to the game, and he had bad offensive line help in front of him, so that definitely played a factor. But at the end of the day, it's preseason. You look at some other starting quarterbacks out there, they don't get much playing time, and I felt like Russ was out there for 4 series, and on series number 4, he finally put a score together, but it probably shouldn't take you that long to get a touchdown against the Cardinals backups. But then again, it is preseason week 1, and he did not have good offensive line help. The depth at the offensive line is definitely a concern, and I think that has to be weighed in, right? I don't think that should give Russ a pass. 7 for 13, 93 yards, 1 touchdown, a lot of that coming on that final drive. Jerry Jeudy had a bad drop, but let's call it how it was. Russell Wilson also had some missed throws, some poor decisions and whatnot. Did not get a ton of help. Garett Bolles was kind of a turnstile, which as your true starting left tackle, that's a bit concerning because you had 4 out of your 5 starting offensive linemen out there. It should be better than that, but I do think Russ should also, take some ownership in what was not tremendous play to start. But at the end of the day, it's preseason week 1. I am definitely one of the harsher Russell Wilson critics out there. So if I'm telling you guys, do not overreact and do not make a big deal out of preseason week 1 from 4 series, that says a lot right there. So grade Russell Wilson's performance versus Arizona. A, B, C, D, or F. I'm going to give you my letter grade in just a moment, but scroll on down and type a letter for me in the comment section. I'm going to go B-. I think I initially had it like a C+, but he had no help from the offensive line. He faced a lot of pressure, in fact, to the tune of 64%, which was the highest amongst all quarterbacks in preseason football week 1. So no one was running for their life more than Russell Wilson was. And this offensive line needs to be better. Now, he did not have all 5 starters out there for all 4 series, and that says something, and that has to be weighed in. But at the end of the day, Garett Bolles, Ben Powers, those are 2 highly paid offensive linemen. They've got to play better, especially Bolles, Cushenberry, Quinn Miners. I mean, there just has to be an overall improvement from the offensive line. It definitely stung not having Mike McGlinchey out there. He is dealing with a knee sprain he suffered right before the Cardinals game. Doesn't sound like he's going to be able to play at all in the preseason, so fingers crossed he will be ready to roll against Max Crosby and the Raiders in week 1. But Garett Bolles is coming off a leg fracture, so as harsh as I've been so far on Bolles, it's the first game back from a broken leg. There's probably going to be some cobwebs he needs to shake off. And I'm not worried about that because preseason is the time to do it, right? That's what we learned last year. If you don't play these guys in the preseason, well, you get the Seahawks game where players are rusty and players are not where they should be by the time the regular season rolls around. This is the time to look a little bit shaky. Hopefully by the last week of the preseason, whether or not Denver plays their starters, they are looking much more up to regular season speed, but you want to see these mistakes now and not in the regular season. So if you see the mistakes now, the question begs, will they continue into the regular season? Something tells me that Sean Payton is going to get these boys under control and ready to roll week 1 of the regular season because that's what great coaches do. And this offensive line does have talent, right? Bolles has been a Pro Bowl offensive lineman. Ben Powers is one of the better guards in football. Cushenberry quietly kind of looked the best of all of them out there on Saturday or Friday night. So you get that parlayed with Quinn Miners' breakout season, the healthy Mike McGlinchey. The offensive line needs to be better. The depth needs to be better, no doubt about that. But I am not going to even reach for the panic button after 1 preseason game. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show is made possible by our sportsbook partner, BetUS. Give me 30 seconds to tell you guys about how awesome BetUS is. Because when you go to chatsports.com/bet and you enter promo code Broncos125, they hook you guys up with a 125% deposit bonus. Now, in layman's terms, let's say you deposit $100. Will they match that $100 and then give you an extra $25? Why not? I don't know any other sportsbook out there doing this type of giveaway, so make sure you use our exclusive link along with our promo code to get that awesome deposit bonus. Now, as for some roster sleepers going into the second preseason game, what about Jaleel McLaughlin? Now, I don't know if I was the only one that had this moment of a heart attack where I was like, have I been saying his name wrong my entire time covering this team so far in the preseason? But that was not the case, thankfully. McLaughlin, though, that UDFA out of Youngstown State who leads the NCAA in all rushing yards across all divisions, put up 4 carries for 20 yards, 5 carries a pop, 1 touchdown, which I thought would be the game-winning touchdown. Also had 1 grab for 12 yards. And like I said, notably, he is not named McLaughlin, or however I guess you pronounce that differently, But there was that awesome typo on his nameplate where it had MCG. And when I saw that initially, I had a oh shit moment. I think I've been saying his name, there it is, wrong, my entire time covering this team this preseason. So luckily, at least for my selfish sake, it was not me who screwed it up, but it was the team jersey guy. I don't know what job that is, the athletic manager, whatever it's called. But at the end of the day, I think McLaughlin is making this roster. I don't know if he has done so well that Denver is forced to take 4 running backs, or he's just going to take someone's spot, whether that's Tyler Beatty or Tony Jones, but he's making this roster. Because Denver might look at this and go, hey, he's really good. We don't have a spot for him this year, but maybe we can hide him on our practice squad this year. And next year, we don't sign a Samaje Perine, or we don't sign a Tony Jones or Tyler Beatty because we already have our RB2 or RB3. The risk with that is he might not be on your practice squad for long, right? If he's on your practice squad, any team can sign him, and the Denver Broncos run the risk of losing him to another team, so they might not want to risk it and put him on their practice squad. Other teams, like the Cardinals, are going to be watching this tape and go, there's some RB4 in Denver. He would be our RB2. Let's go make that move right now. So I think he makes the Broncos 53-man roster. Second sleeper to watch for is the cornerback Jaquan McMillian. I mean, what an all-time name for starters. I mean, this guy, baller name, no doubt about it. But Jaquan McMillian, he was a big-time standout during the preseason win, or preseason loss against the Cardinals, which, by the way, I feel like the tune of this team would be so different if the Cardinals did not just convert a 2-point conversion against the Broncos' fourth stringers. Like, by and large, it was not a great game for either side, but I'm not going to let the last minute and a half against the fourth and third string defense sway me dramatically for how this team looked in the game. But McMillian in the game, UDFA last year out of East Carolina. He had 6 tackles and a sack, just came off the edge, completely blew up Clayton Tune. Awesome to see. Now, he has some regular season experience. He was elevated for that final Week 18 game against the Chargers. He played every single defensive snap, had 7 tackles in the win over LA. So a little bit of NFL regular experience, and spent all of last year on the Broncos practice squad. But I think he's going to make this roster, right? When you look at the cornerback room, he was CB 3, if you will, behind Pat Surtain, Damari Mathis as outside corners with K'Wan Williams in the slot, especially with Riley Moss out for the preseason with a core muscle injury. They don't want to run too shallow at cornerback. So I'll call my shot once again and say we've got a potential another UDFA making this roster, this one being a 2022 UDFA, but still Denver continues to have a great eye for UDFAs that end up making their 53-man roster, and more often than not, having a pretty big impact on that roster, not just being the last guy on it. Now, the run of UDFAs continues. This time it is defensive tackle Elijah Garcia. Hand up, I've talked a lot about some of the UDFAs going into this preseason game, especially Jaleel McLaughlin. I did not give enough airtime to Elijah Garcia. Now, he was originally with the LA Rams, a UDFA out of Rice, and then the Broncos in December of 2022 signed him off of the Rams practice squad. He had 2 game appearances for Denver in 2022. He recorded 1 tackle in those 2 games. And then in his preseason week 1 stats, 3 tackles, 2 sacks. He completely exploded off the ball. He was a menace. He was a force to be reckoned with. Elijah Garcia, big-time winner coming out of this preseason game. And now we look at the Denver Broncos defensive line. You've got Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Jonathan Harris, Matt Henningsen. I think all 4 of those guys are locks to make the roster. Now, once you get Mike Purcell back from injury, he's also a good lock to make the roster. Maybe not as confident as those first 4 players are, but I think Garcia might make this roster. I'm just not as confident as the other 2 players because I'm not going to become victim to backup 3rd, 4th string defensive tackle plays well against the Cardinals, which already is an awful offensive line, and they're backups too. I'm not going to get too drunk off of a couple great sacks against the 3rd and 4th string offensive line for the Cardinals and say that makes him a lock to make this roster, whereas McMillan's spot on this team was reflected based on where he was in the initial depth chart. And the running back, McLaughlin, he's just looked good all offseason long, from OTAs to mini camp to now in the training camp and preseason. For Garcia, I'm just not quite there yet after one preseason game, but I think he's definitely got a better shot of making it after this game than beforehand. But who is your roster sleeper candidate? Let me know if it's someone that we talked about on the show or if it's someone I completely left off my list. Let me know down in the comment section. Now, to wrap up the show, we still have some summer hot takes to get to until week 1 of the regular season gets here. It is a nice cool 81 degrees in Denver today, so we get a warm plate take. And my warm plate take for today might be a bit hot for a warm plate take, or maybe it's quietly what we're all thinking, and that is I think Bolles is closer than what your average fan may think to being off this roster in 2024. It's just one preseason game. He's coming off a leg fracture. It's not even so much about that as it is about he hasn't really lived up to that big contract extension. He kind of peaked that 2020 season, got paid, and hasn't looked like a cornerstone franchise left tackle. So you parlay the fact a $20 million cap hit in 2024 and $16 million of cap savings with there was some buzz about Bolles potentially being traded this offseason. If he does not have a Pro Bowl caliber year, Denver might look at $20 million of cap hit and $16 million in cap savings as too good to pass on for someone that is being paid like a franchise left tackle. And I don't think he is looking like a franchise left tackle. I think he's a very good left tackle, but I don't know if he's so good that he's worth $20 million on your books. That might be the disparity right there, and that's why I think there's a better chance that I think people are realizing this could be his last year in Denver. But we've got a long ways to go. Hopefully Bolles has a great season and he holds down the left side of the field, and we never have to talk about that again. But that's my warm plate take for today. Get out of the kitchen if you can't take the heat. We're going to sign off. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, all that good stuff, and we'll see everyone next time.